So I was thinking about what am I going to preach about this morning, and as is usually the case, I'm put things off until the last minute, and so, it came 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, we're still watching TV, having some dinner, and in the back of my head, I'm trying to think of what I'm going to talk about. 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock starts rolling around, and Nikki starts looking at me, oh, you know what you're going to do yet? And I still didn't. So as is the case, I'm very lucky to have some good friends. Maybe I'm lucky. And because I sent out this message at 8:47, basically asking a few people, hey, I need some ideas for tomorrow morning. And Scott Gary, one of my best friends in the world, if I ever think that I'm going to have a big head, I know Scott will take care of that, because he sent me this message. How about the parable of the 5 foolish virgins that weren't prepared the night before? Now, he should know, if anybody should know, that this was last minute and things like that, but of course he's just going to use that pin and pop any kind of ego that I had. And of course, my very supportive wife thought that was absolutely hilarious, so that was the message she sent back. And then one of the other messages that I did get was from Therese Tade, and she said, well, how about Jesus? Well, thank you, Captain Obvious. I might as well have said, I think I might have even texted her back, well, how about just saying something from the Bible? That's just about as broad of a topic as you can say to talk about Jesus. But the more I thought about it over the next hour and a half or so, I really didn't start preparing until closer to 11 o'clock. I just couldn't get out of my head. Maybe I should talk something directly about Jesus. So looking back over some of my notes and some things that I've prepared for classes and things like that, you're always going to get that on a short notice kind of sermon. I looked back to when I taught a class on the book of Luke and really thinking about how Luke presented the gospel story in a way that really relates to me. Luke being a physician, a very logical person, he says there at the beginning of his book, everybody is taking time to write down these events that happened with Jesus. He's specifically talking about the other gospels that were being written. However, he says, I'm going to do things a little differently. It was good to him to sit down and to write an orderly account of these events so that they could be clearly explained. So that's why the book of Luke is slightly different than the other gospels, even the synoptic gospels, which it shares a lot with. It's different in that it moves things, not perhaps chronological, but in a way to get across a point, a way to tell in an orderly manner the things that happened. And so today we're going to stay exclusively from Luke chapter 8. We're going to be reading a good chunk of that chapter this morning, because the question we're going to try to answer is, while Jesus was here on this earth, just what kind of power did he have? What set him apart? Or did he have something that was different than other preachers, other prophets? What kind of power did he show while he was here? And like he does most things, Luke takes a very orderly approach to this and is going to lay it out for us. And so we find here in Luke chapter 8, and we're going to end up reading eventually this morning all of those verses from verse 22 all the way up to verse 56. And we're going to talk about 3 different, maybe I shouldn't say different types of power, but 3 different things that Jesus had power over. And then we're going to talk about what that means when we look at those together. So there, beginning in verse 22, the first thing that Luke is going to tell us is that Jesus had absolute power and authority over nature. And this is going to be much different than anybody else who has come before, because he is going to be able to do it himself. So let's go ahead and begin reading here in Luke chapter 8 and verse 22. I will have all of these verses on the screen if you want to follow along with me, or feel free to follow along with your Bible also. One day, he and his disciples got into a boat, and he told them, let's cross over to the other side of the lake. So they set out, and as they were sailing, he fell asleep. Then a fierce windstorm came down upon the lake, and they were being swamped and were in danger. Now, this is a serious situation. I'm not much of a boat guy, and really the only time I've been on a boat much is to go fishing with my grandpa, and we had a small boat and one that we would take on Lake Michigan just outside of Chicago there. And there was one time where we got out there probably farther than we should have been. So far you can't see the shore, even that huge skyline of Chicago. You can't see it anymore. And we're out there, and a storm started coming in, and the waves were getting to that 3 and 4, 5 foot mark. Not enough to really be coming over and swamping the boat as we have here. The boat wasn't taking on water, but yet still enough that I was starting to get a little nervous. I was younger at the time. And then, of course, that was the time that, because it was kind of an older boat, that the motor decided to give out on us, and we couldn't get it started. And we actually had to make an emergency call to the Coast Guard to come tow us, back to the port of Chicago. But even as much as I was in a pretty dangerous situation, it's nothing like this here. They are actually in a storm that could capsize this boat, could swamp enough water over the edge of the boat to sink it. And they know it. Look at what they said in the next verse. And they came and woke him, saying, "Master, we are going to die." This is not, okay, I'm just a little nervous about these waves. No, they are concerned that if something doesn't happen here, they are not going to survive this situation. We sing the song about this all the time. Master, the tempest is raging. And we don't know, how can you be sleeping there? Okay? So he got up and rebuked the wind and the raging waves, so they ceased, and there was a calm. They wake Jesus up, and he just has to speak to the winds and command the waves to be calm. And that's what happens. It's pretty amazing. So much so that even the disciples who were there, and he said to them, "Where is your faith?" They were fearful and amazed. These are people who have been with Jesus. Now, this is not very far into his ministry. It's still beginning, but they've seen all the miracles he's done so far. They've heard him teaching. And this is something different. They're afraid. And they even say here, "Who can this be?" This is a theme in the book of Luke where the disciples and even the Pharisees and the leaders and the common people are continually asking, "Who is this? Who can this be?" Because of the different things he was doing. And this level of miracle, this ability, as he said here, to just command the winds and the waves, and they obey him, then that was something else. So much so that his apostles were now afraid of him because of the amount of power that he shows here. Luke is going to then go on, assuming, okay, now we've established that he has power over the natural world, he has power over the winds and the waves and nature. Well, what else does he have power over? Well, the physical realm, obviously. What about the spiritual realm? So he's going to now talk about how Jesus also had power over demons and spirits. And let's read this story together here, beginning there in verse 26. "And then they sailed to the region of the Gerasenes, which was opposite to Galilee. And when he got on land, a demon-possessed man from the town met him. For a long time he had worn no clothes and did not stay in a house, but in the tombs. And when he saw Jesus, he cried out and fell down before him and said in a loud voice, 'What do you have to do with me, Jesus, you Son of the Most High God? I beg you, don't torment me.' For he had commanded the unclean spirit to come out of the man. Many times it had seized him, and though he was guarded, bound by chains and shackles, he would snap the restraints and be driven by the demon into deserted places." Think about the power this man had under that possession. To be able to be guarded, chained, and shackled, and just to break those metal chains and shackles and overpower his guards, and still be able to go out into the wilderness. This is not just a normal sickness. This is a true demon possession here. "What is your name?" Jesus asked him. "Legion," he said, because many demons had entered him, not just one, but many. And they begged him not to banish them to the abyss. Not only are the demons here recognizing who Jesus is, they immediately recognize that and called him out as the Son of the Most High God. But they recognize that he has authority over them, and they begin to beg and plead and ask for a favor. Now, we're not sure why Jesus grants it. We're not told. but yet it's the recognition that he has the power even to grant or not things that these demons would ask. So what did they ask for? A large herd of pigs was there, feeding on the hillside, and the demons begged him to permit them to enter into the pigs, and he gave them permission. The demons came out of the man and entered into the pigs, and the herd rushed down the steep bank into the lake and drowned. And when the men who tended them saw what had happened, they ran off and reported it in the town and in the countryside. Then the people went out to see what had happened. They came to Jesus and found the man the demon had departed from, sitting at Jesus' feet, dressed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. They were afraid? That doesn't make much sense, does it? I mean, here was this guy who's been plaguing their village, able to break away, running around naked, not able to be a normal part of society. We don't know how much he tormented other people, but yet definitely the demons were driving him to do some crazy things. And now they come and they find him clothed and in his right mind and sitting there at the feet of Jesus. Wouldn't you think their reaction would be thankful and amazed and, oh man, you were able to heal this guy and that was such a terrible thing? Come to my house. You know, I'm not feeling so good, or my wife or my sister or my son, my daughter, they're not feeling so good. They're sick. Why don't you come and heal them? If you could do this great thing, surely you can accomplish that. But yet they recognize that, again, this was at another level. This was something that they had never seen before, the kind of power that they didn't understand. And so they weren't thankful about it. They were scared of it. So much so, let's look at what they did. Meanwhile, the eyewitnesses reported to them how the demon-possessed man was delivered. Then all the people of the Gerasenes region asked him to leave them because they were gripped by great fear. So getting into the boat, he returned. This was such a momentous use of power that they begged him to leave. It just makes me think of that time whenever the children of Israel in the Old Testament were at the foot of Mount Sinai, and they've been saved from Egypt and all those miracles that got them out of Egypt, and now they're at the base of Mount Sinai, and God chooses to actually speak to them. One of the only 2 times, perhaps 3, in the Bible that we believe God spoke and people heard and understand what he's saying. But yet because of the voice of God and the way the ground was shaking and the fire on the mountain and the lightning and the thunders and all that thing, they were so scared that they went to Moses and said, hey, you go talk to God, but don't let him do that anymore, because if he keeps that up, we're just going to die. There seems to be this just absolute awe that comes over people who see this power of this kind of magnitude, so much so that their first reaction is just fear. I can't be part of that. It's too much for me. And that's what happened here. So the man from whom the demons had departed kept begging him to be with him, but he sent him away and said, go back to your home and tell all that God has done for you. And he went proclaiming throughout the town all that Jesus had done for him. The man has the proper reaction. Oh, you've saved me. Please let me follow you. Let me go with you wherever you go. I want you there in case this happens again, maybe. But Jesus says, no, your job now is to go and tell people about what happened. Go and spread the news how Jesus had power over demons and spirits. So he has power over the natural realm. He has power over the spiritual realm. Is there really anything left to say that he has power over? So Luke then is going to progress to the last thing that there is left to even show that Jesus has power over, and that is sickness and death. So we find here, beginning in verse 40, when Jesus returned, so he was on the one side of the sea. They didn't want him there, so he got back in the boat and went back across. So when Jesus returned, the crowd welcomed him, for they were all expecting him. Just then, a man named Jairus came, and he was a leader of the synagogue. And he fell down at Jesus' feet and pleaded with him to come to his house, because he had an only daughter about 12 years old, and she was at death's door. While he was going, the crowds were nearly crushing him. So Jesus has already been healing some people. He comes back across the lake after doing these miracles, and this leader of the synagogue says, "Hey, my daughter's sick. Come and heal her." So as they start going then, we find this little insert of a story here about Jesus healing some sickness. And we're not going to talk a great deal about it because Lawrence covered it so well just recently. But we do find beginning there in the next verse about this woman who was suffering. Let's just go ahead and read that quickly there. A woman suffering from bleeding for 12 years, who had spent all she had on doctors, yet could not be healed by any way, approached from behind and touched the tassel of his robe. Instantly, her bleeding stopped. "Who touched me?" Jesus asked. When they all denied it, Peter said, "Master, the crowds are hemming you in and pressing against you." "Someone did touch me," said Jesus. "I know that power has gone out from me." And when the woman saw that she was discovered, she came trembling and fell down before him. And in the presence of all the people, she declared the reason that she had touched him, and now she was instantly cured. "Daughter," he said to her, "your faith has made you well. Go in peace." Jesus had so much power that even not consciously was he able to heal people. This woman's faith was so great that just by touching his robe, she was able to draw upon that power and be healed. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Again, Lawrence covered that greatly. Other than, think about Jairus. Here is this guy whose daughter is homesick, and he's been waiting for the teacher to come, and he finally makes it back across the sea. Everybody's waiting, and he convinces him to come to his house. And on the way, this woman who had been sick for 12 years, which, by the way, is the exact same age of his daughter, right, gets healed. Jairus has got to be thinking, "Oh, man, this is great. I got the right guy. Look, he's going to be able to heal my daughter." But yet, while Jesus is speaking to the woman, let's look at what happens. While he was still speaking, someone came from the synagogue leader's house saying, "Your daughter is dead. Don't bother the teacher anymore." Man, what 180 Jairus' feelings have got to be doing here. Going from, "I've got the guy, we're almost to my house, we're going to make it, and he's going to heal my daughter." I just can't imagine how happy he would have been and what that would have felt like, to now all of a sudden someone comes and says, "You're just a little too late. She's already died." Can you imagine the low that Jairus must have sunk to? I imagine him thinking about this woman. "Why couldn't you wait just a little bit longer? If we hadn't stopped so that you could be healed, you've been sick for 12 years. You've got a long time left. We could have come back and healed you. Why didn't the teacher just go straight to my house? And why didn't he heal my daughter?" But yet, I believe it happened for a reason. Because Luke is about to show us that Christ's power goes even beyond just healing the sick. This is such a serious situation that even the people who knew Jesus had the power to heal, as soon as the girl dies, what do they think? There's no reason for him to even come anymore. Yeah, it's one thing to heal sick people, to make them well, but this girl's beyond help now. She's died. Surely nobody can fix that. Well, Jesus answers. He answered him, "Don't be afraid. Only believe, and she will be made well." After he came to the house, he let no one enter with him except Peter, John, James, and the child's father and mother. Everyone was crying and mourning for her, but he said, "Stop crying, for she is not dead, but asleep." And many people over the years have taken this verse there where Jesus said she's not dead, she's just asleep. And they've tried to say, well, surely because, it was 2,000 years ago, and science and medical knowledge and, what we can do with medicines and machines, that didn't exist. They just thought she was dead. She was maybe unconscious and her heart rate got so low that they couldn't feel it, but surely she wasn't really dead. She may have just been sleeping. But look at the people who were in the house. Look at their reaction. They started laughing at him because they knew she was dead. This was not just a guess. I don't care how long ago it was, people know the difference in a little girl between she's sick, she's sleeping, she's barely holding on to, no, she's passed. And these people who are here in the house, they think absolutely no different than the people who came to meet Jairus and said, well, she's dead now, there's nothing he can do. They think the exact same thing here. But yet, Jesus took her by the hand and called out, "Child, get up." And her spirit returned, and she got up at once. Then he gave orders that she be given something to eat. Her parents were astounded, but he instructed them to tell no one what had happened. First of all, I don't know how they would have done that. If when my daughters were that age, and Erin wasn't much different from that whenever we found out that she had a tumor and had to have one of the emergency room doctors are telling us it's emergency surgery. Other surgeons are saying, no, it can wait, and nobody really knows. If someone had just come along and just healed her of that, let alone if she had died, man, I wouldn't have been able to keep my mouth shut. Are you kidding me? I can hardly keep my mouth shut normally. Let alone if something that good happened, I would have to tell everybody about it. But the interesting thing here is that Jesus is able to just speak to this girl's spirit, to call her spirit back, but he didn't just call her spirit back, because if the spirit just came back to the same body, what would happen? She would have just died again, right? Even though the scripture doesn't explicitly say it here, not only did he have to bring her spirit back, he had to heal the body so that she wouldn't die again. An amazing story of Jesus showing his power over sickness and death. All three of these stories do have a common thread between them. Did you notice it? When Jesus is in the boat and he's sleeping and they wake him up, what does he do? Well, it's got to be like when Moses was going to tame the Red Sea, right? He must have taken a staff and held it out over the water, or maybe even smacked the water to rebuke it. No. Jesus just stood up and spoke to the winds and the waves. And then whenever he runs into this demon-possessed man who was able to break chains and break his bonds and overcome those who were guarding him, he must have, done something to paralyze him, or, done something else to kind of calm him down, taken some kind of physical action. Nope. All he did was speak and command the demons to leave. And then when it comes here to the little girl and they find her just recently dead, does he perform some kind of CPR and he's doing chest compressions and giving her some kind of shot of something? No. All he does is speak and tell her to rise. All three of these stories, Luke is making a point here that all Jesus has to do is speak and miraculous things happen. What kind of power is that? Who had the power to just be able to speak and make things happen? Does that make you think of any verses in the Bible? All of us, down to the youngest child in here, know that in the book of Genesis, what happened? And God said, and it was so. God is the only being in the universe who has the ability to just speak and things happen. What kind of power did Jesus have? Luke goes out of his way, not to beat us over the head with it like John does, and tell us how that Jesus was the Word and there at the beginning. Instead, he goes out of his way to make you think about it. And to make you think the kind of power Jesus had, we've only seen that one other time before. And that was at the beginning, when God had the very power to speak and things happened. Jesus had the same kind of power while he was on this earth that he did when earth was being created. It's no wonder that he had power over the natural world. He was the one who created it. And it's no wonder that he could cast demons out and have power over that spiritual world. He was the one who put that barrier in place. And finally, even that final barrier of death, he's the only one who could just speak and reach across that barrier and bring that little girl back. What kind of power did Jesus have? He had the power of God because he was God. Just as Jesus had the power to reach across that barrier of death and call that little girl back, he also has the power to reach out to you today and to call you back from whatever sin you're trapped in, maybe for the first time to come forward and acknowledge him as the Son of God, the one who carried the very power of God the Father here on this earth. Or maybe if you've wandered away and want to do something about that, won't you come forward while we stand and sing?